When I'm starting a new manga or watching a new anime, there's nothing that hooks me harder on a series than seeing the creator's personality shine through their work, directly influencing every part of what they create. It can be the references they make, styles they use, character tropes, and the plot progressing in a way that no one could expect. You know what I mean, like the things an artist does that feel like they said, who gives a shit about the rules, what if I just vibed instead? Creating a thing that feels like it couldn't come from anyone else in the world and people gaining a whole new appreciation for that artist. Now, obviously this idea stretches far outside of just manga and by extension anime. People like Hideo Kojima, Junji Ito, Quentin Tarantino, Suda51, Hideki Kamiya, David Lynch. These are all names people know and respect because of this exact reason. For better or worse, these people have cemented themselves in culture by being someone who took the things they made and time again translated themselves into it. What they love, how they feel, how they think. Their creations are the embodiments of themselves. Now, sometimes this works in astounding ways, creating entirely new media landscapes for future generations to follow in the path of, those original creatives being hailed as legends of the medium. And other times, as much as you see the creativity and pure joy that can come from these artists and their works, it doesn't mean those same works are without fault. For everything Hideo Kojima and Metal Gear Solid does right for me, it could do something just as questionable, leaving a legacy that, while incredible and monumental, is not without its weird-ass spots. And it's with this thought today that I want to talk about an artist and the two major series that they have created, both the good aspects and the bad. The artist being Ogure Ito, or as he has styled the name and is more popularly known as, Oh Great, get it, Ogure Ito, Oh Great, and his two smash hit manga that ran concurrently beside each other, Tenjo Tenge and Air Gear. Well, okay, I kinda lied about that actually. Originally, this video was going to be just an Air Gear video, but after I started reading it and was looking up things online, I learned that Tenjo Tenge ran at the same time for large chunks of both series, with Tenjo actually being the one that had started first. So with that in mind, I decided to put a pause on Air Gear and go and check out Tenjo, eventually linking up with Air Gear's release date, and at that point, reading and working on both simultaneously for two separate videos. And that was a plan I made about 2 years ago now, I think. After starting Tintin, I got really invested in it. I had meant to read them side by side, but ended up putting a complete hold on reading Air Gear so I could blast through Tenjo faster and then double back eventually because the plot was just really picking up. The characters were super raw, and everything about it was just extremely interesting. And that was a deep investment that lasted for about 10 or so volumes before I started to have some thoughts about that same story. Thoughts that continued to grow and change my perception on Tenjo, Air Gear, and Oh Great himself. Thoughts that after finishing Tintin caused me to kind of completely drop Air Gear for about 2 years, only restarting my read in July of 2023. And now, after finishing both Air Gear, revisiting Tenjo Tenge, and checking out more of Oh Great himself as an artist and a writer, I fucking brought this car back around and I'm ready to finally dive into these two series and talk about what makes them something that, despite compounding issues, are worth experiencing. But before we get going in on those, let's talk about the man behind the art first, Oh Great himself. So before starting either Air Gear or Tenjo, I had seen an artist named Oh Great online with an exclamation point between the words and had always just kind of laughed at that like, honestly, come on, it's memorable as hell. But I couldn't exactly place the guy himself. Turns out, just like Kota Hirano from my Hellsing video, I had absolutely seen dude's name on the back rows of, websites. Because imagine that, bro got his start writing H-comics. From an interview he gave back in like 2006, his entire manga career started because he was in debt to his workplace after he took out an advance loan to play pachinko and kinda just blew it all. So needing to make some quick cash, he entered a manga contest and won back the loan payment. To which he can't even actually remember if he paid it back after winning or just went and played more pachinko. A man after my own heart, bro's the definition of that diamond meme. He can't stop dropping the balls now, he's so close. After making some money on manga, he kind of realized that he could keep submitting stories to potentially get paid, and began to send his shit out to magazines hoping for a shot at both a real serialization and a decent paycheck. His first series, titled September Kiss, was accepted to an adult magazine called Hot Milk, him noting he wanted to write about cool-ass motorcycle shit, but since it was an adult magazine, he had to add in the sexual elements it was kind of required for publication. This led to his early years of drawing doujin-ass stories full of all kinds of tags that we won't be talking about here. One of them being titled Silky Whip, even getting an early-ass 90s English print by Eros Comics, which is wild in retrospect, having official doujins by him in the West way before he went on to do what he's really known for is super fucking cool. Calling my shots to the stands like I'm Babe fucking Ruth, I'll own those one day, they'll be on my shelf, goddammit, calling it now. After reading through them myself to see how they stacked up compared to the artist that he would become, it was pretty interesting. Despite his art still being early and the general 90s style being so prevalent like it was everywhere else at the time, and even though these aesthetics don't really represent where O-Great's art would go, these early series still feel very him. Some of the covers, the character shots, the overall vibe they can give off between big sex. These really felt like the cracks that would eventually form who O-Great would become as an artist. As he progressed and moved away from just straight arrow shit, he dropped more short-form stories, more one-shots, and after going through each of them in order, you can see his art grow and evolve so much, it becoming that style that we'll be talking about a bit later. His two short series, Majin and Himiko Den, are the perfect examples of this, them both featuring beautiful full spreads and dope-ass color pages, as well as his horny sensibilities. And as those cracks kept growing and his art kept evolving, he eventually broke through and O-Great was given his first real-ass title role in 1997, it coming down from Shueisha's monthly Ultra Jump magazine, with the start of Tenjo Tenge on July 25th, running all the way until August of 2010. So, coming off all of his arrow stories and short form runs, this would be his first ever big time series. And as for how it went, well, first let's talk about what the fuck Tenjo Tenge even is. The story follows Soichiro Nagi and his childhood best friend Bob Makihara, starting their first day of high school at Todo Academy. Now, them being the badasses they are, the plan is to rule the school by beating the dog piss out of anybody that gets in their way. The same thing they had done at their previous school while calling themselves the Knuckle Bombs. Despite the two boys both being strong as hell and willing to take zero amounts of shit, they quickly realize they've enrolled in a strange-ass hell school. A tiny girl transforming into a whole-ass woman and the kind of plain-looking boring dude in class, completely losing his shit and stomping down Nagi to put him in his place. The place, of course, being crashed out the window and through the roof of a building, landing in between a huge pair of boobs. The boobs themselves belonging to Aya Natsume, the love interest of Nagi's, who immediately falls for him. Yeah, we may not be an arrow manga anymore, but that doesn't mean O-Great isn't horny, bitch! Anyway, this quickly slaps Nagi's ass as he realizes this isn't your average high school and taking this place over won't be that simple, considering it's actually a secret martial arts training facility and everyone here is a goddamn Rick James super freak. Joining the Juken Club with Bob, a martial arts school club ran by the Natsume sisters Aya and Maya, it begins a series-long war that stretches between them, other school clubs, the most anime school student council imaginable, Nagi's unhinged-ass family, and also ninjas in late feudal-era Japan. Now, just a few years into the publication of Tintin with Ultra Jump, O-Great himself gets hit up by Kodansha in 2002. And they say, bro, we need you in our shit, what have you got? And as he's sitting there drawing up the next chapter of Tenjo at his desk, he looks over to his old pair of inline skates from 1989 and thinks, what if they were birds? And bam, he wrote the premise for his next big hit fucking series right there. That being the one and only Air Gear, him publishing the first chapter in Weekly Shonen magazine on November 6th of 2002. That's the Kodansha print that used to have a healthy mix of gravure covers and manga covers, having series like Fairy Tail, Ippo, and Negima, with Air Gear running weekly alongside Tenjo Tenge and monthly Ultra Jump until August 19th of 2010. Air Gear going on and ending 2 years later on May 23rd of 2012. So, 2 magazines, 2 different series, 2 different release time frames, and 2 very different plots, all by one dude at the same time. Real shit, that's a lot to have on your plate at once, but bro said fuck it, we ball. And now, before we dive even deeper, let's first talk about Air Gear and what the fuck it even is. Itsuki Minami, known as Iki, is the king of Higashi Junior High, the quote-unquote babyface heavy hitter who is the strongest fighter in his local street gang, the Eastside Guns, with a Z. He lives with his 4 sisters, them not actually being related, but instead his parents dumping him here when he was a kid and the 4 girls raising them as a brother. Life's pretty simple for Iki, honestly, a dude who just goes with the flow of the wind and kicks the asses of anyone who has a problem with him, able to just sit on a grassy hill, lay around and take it 1 second at a time. And it's at that moment on that specific grassy hillside when he sees the migratory bird herself, Simka, blast through an alleyway, flying over his head and out into the sky, riding on fairly new technology called air treks. Straight up inline skates with motors in them that let riders climb up walls and fly out into the world, creating a whole new wave of transportation, sports, science, and crime. Iki, after seeing these ATs for the first time and them being used by a hot girl who's flying so freely in the sky, is immediately hooked on the idea of air treks and wants to break into that world of free riding himself. Him heading home after seeing Simka fly so high and unfortunately getting jumped by a rival gang and his own shit kicked in for once. And bro, real shit, they shoved a whole firecracker up his ass and lit it off. It's a pretty rough start for a protagonist, honestly. Him wobbling away in tears, left and betrayed by his friends at the lowest point he has ever been. That is, until those 4 sisters step the fuck in to reveal that they're air trek experts this whole time and can help him get revenge on the firecracker asshole exploders, cementing Iki's new lifelong obsession with air treks. And from here, he would go on to learn about the extremely insane world that these skates have created, the sisters he's lived with his entire life's true identities, forming his own storm riding team known as Kogara Sumaru, and finally taking part in the coming battle to stay at the top of the air trek world, becoming the one who has obtained the true air gear, whatever that may mean exactly, and finding what it is that he truly wants to skate for. So, after reading both the early volumes of Tenjo and Air Gear, it's safe to say, I think, that for mostly anyone, the thing you noticed first and foremost about Oh Great's art is goddamn, it's fucking beautiful. Like I had said a bit ago, his early art for sure did have that 90s aesthetic that like tons of series around this time had. The eyes, the rounded edges, it was a whole ass vibe. But even in this early art, the spark of uniqueness was always there. Reading all of Tenjo first, I was blown away with how in every chapter, like almost every single page, there was just this unique level of immaculate detail all around in every aspect. And it felt so real despite it still having those same 90s aesthetics. The amount of craft put into the art itself was so strong, and I thought to myself, well, this is a monthly series, so you know, that's fair, he has more time to work on it. Air Gear was weekly, so I bet it's a bit less detailed, and then proceeded to get my ass blasted out because fuck no, that's not the case at all. These 2 series ran at the same time and he drew them simultaneously, and they were both able to look like this. Now there's a few artists whose character features I hold up there with being like the best in the business. Nyaa, Araki, Kubo, just to name a couple of them. And right next to him in a field of his own is Oh Great. Obviously, he does have a team of assistants that help back him up like most other artists, all credit to them as well, of course. But when it comes to Oh Great's characters, they all just have a certain softness to them, like an unironic prettiness that feels so intentful and creative. Whether it's in Tintin or Air Gear, he never compromises, and gives each series the same level of attention and detailed love. Like, I can't stress enough how crazy it was to draw 4 to 5 chapters a month for one series that looks this good, while also cooking up one monthly that was looking this fucking good right beside it. Like, the level of detail in his monthly art is so fucking dense and wild. Most of the time, he seems to care more about drawing how the scene itself flows with the character, sometimes removing anything else about the moment and fully focusing on the person in frame, how they feel, how they move, the emotion they want to convey. And there's this odd sense of somber beauty in it. The flow of the hair, the softness of the eyes. It feels like there's such an understanding and almost obsession with creating that perfect image he has in his head of a character. Like, there's no shortcuts or compromises, just beauty and artistry. And it's a beauty that is almost always amplified by the straight up, outright, overwhelming goddamn cool factor that everything he does drips with. Right next to these insanely well detailed character profiles are always fucking dope outfits they wear, the branding, the accessories, the mix of English and kanji, characters always throwing up the middle finger, sticking their tongues out and flowing with the vibe of the scene. And it's just so cool, like goddamn, I can't think of another way to describe it. Both of these series focus on rebel kids who are fighting the shitty fates they've been dealt with by previous generations. The kids of the world who have to inherit the bullshit from their forefathers and struggle against things that they shouldn't even have to be a part of. And that rebellious energy radiates from every aspect of the art, the poses, the outfits, the general shit kid nature everyone has. Like, tons of characters cuss loudly like motherfuckers in both series, shout out Agito, and it's all just part of his overall aesthetic that carries his series art from just being so well drawn to being his brand of beautiful cool. Both of his manga have an almost endless amount of cover pages, and bro, there is so much variety in these styles and subjects. Like, I've been using them as backgrounds for this video, you've probably seen it back there. And there is no better example of how much he loves drawing cool shit, because almost every chapter welcomes you with something dope to look at. Originally, I was just going to have my favorite scroll across here, but now I'm just killing time because goddamn I love them all and can't decide which ones to not include. Hell, and now that I'm thinking about it, Oh Great is one of the few artists that explicitly feature black main characters in both of these series, with Bob Makihara and King Bucha respectively, and in my opinion, treats them with proper respect and has them as important as any other main character. Bob's biggest character trait, outside of him being great in bed, apparently he did have to fuck his way out of that one situation, is that he is as strong as main character Nagi. Sure, the story doesn't give him as many fights and the plot isn't focused on him and crazy bullshit, but as the best friend to the MC, he never falls behind in power and becomes a useless party member, a statement the story goes out of its way to make sure and remind you of. Also, his design just whips ass, plain and simple. He's totally not just Eddie Gordo from Tekken 3, nope, not at all. And on the other side, Bucha fucking rules. He's easily the most level-headed member of Kogara Sumaru, and his tank-ass riding style with the ATs that have treads is super cool. And also, its evolution in the final arc is just fucking insane, but that's a different story. There are those moments where Iki does call him a coffee-stained pig, and that's probably not the best. Like, sure, it isn't always perfect representation, but like with Joko / Choco Love from Shaman King, it does feel like Oh Great on some level has proper respect, even if he just slips a bit in places. Also, not directly from Oh Great himself as much, but each team in Air Gear is represented with a team emblem, a drawn logo to reflect the personality of the team. And just like everything else in Air Gear, they're all so flashy and stylish, having this like graffiti style to them since they're supposed to be slapped up around town to declare a gang's turf. The emblems themselves are all credited to the design of Kei Machida, someone who is both a real designer that works on anime, as well as a character in Air Gear for one chapter, and man, I just fucking love them all so much. It's one of those extra details that wasn't necessarily needed, but it goes a long way in adding small bits of personality to every team Iki and the crew encounter. Looking at a bunch of them for this video, I think my favorite is either Potemkin or Tool 2, but honestly Kogara Samaru's itself is also super fucking good, what can you say? Personally, I think all of this cool-ass aesthetic culminated together at its peak in the color pages of Tenjo Tenge, of which there are over 70 of for a series with over 22 total volumes. And honestly, they show off everything that's so memorable about Oh Great's art. The designs, the color scheming, the general situations and poses the characters are in. Outside of them just being so fucking cool in general, like I could spend so much more time just showing them off and gushing, but they speak so loudly as to why I think his art is something amazing and worth spending most of this video praising. I can only say with so many repeating words what his art can just show you, man, like it's insane. And speaking of those color pages, this guy, Mitsuomi from Tenjo, is just Dio. Like from moment one, he's just the same design as Dio, a thing that Oh Great himself leaned into as the series went on. Bro made this whole color page the cover of Ultra Jump one month, and I love it so much. True king shit. There's a flashback arc in Tenjo, not the first one, the second one, where the art style takes a whole tonal shift with extreme shading and these like wispy pointed proportions to his world. Like he took his art and shifted it from the usual style and now feels something almost like Hiroyuki Takei's Neko Monogatari. And the fact that he can alter his style so drastically mid-series just for a specific arc is proof right there to me of his insane artistic talent. Also, it's cracking me up that I'm writing the script and I keep referencing Takei and Shaman King, mainly because it has the exact same rule of cool that I feel from Oh Great. You can go watch my Shaman King video if you want me to talk more about that specifically. It was my second video, so be nice, you fucks. And when Oh Great isn't focused on those raw shots of his cast being dope as hell, he instead is filling the volumes with insane double page spreads that can range from overly detailed punches with dudes getting their shit rocked, giant flying bone birds that cover the sun above storm riders, or just pure artistic expressions of emotion, no scenery necessary. In both of his series, he consistently draws what I would call impressions of power, like things that aren't exactly real and in the scene like a JoJo stand would be, but the pressure from the cast is so intense and unique that it's like the visual after impression of the power is forming around them. Characters caught in attacks that aren't really how they look, but more so how they feel. Same concept as Demon Slayer honestly, but way fucking cooler. Using this idea, Oh Great is able to draw literal insane powers for characters, them visually doing things that don't make any fucking sense and don't really have to. It's just the impression of that power backed with the emotion of the user. And bringing all of these skills together, he's able to create the flow of both the combat, the movement, and the plot's writing itself. Now, before we dive too much into that last one, let's talk about the actual fighting he creates first. So in my opinion, the combat in Tenjo Tenge is, outside of the art itself, the main reason to show up for the series. It being a martial arts based story with Fist of the North Star being Oh Great's actual favorite manga, the brawls in it were always going to have heavier action to them. But using that same softness I mentioned mixed with the insane artistic liberties he takes, the fighting in Ten reaches a level of intensity and violence that's honestly missing from a lot of manga about these same topics. Brawls in Tenjo are bloody, brutal, and hella wild. Buff-ass characters covering themselves in black shading and looking almost beastly, straight up devouring their enemies with their fists. As a major part of martial arts, there's also a wild amount of super strong weapons that fighters use. Swords, spears, hand blades, chain whips, ninja tools, they got it all. And all of those weapon users fit into the story naturally as either real-life extensions of true martial arts shit, or just insane anime bullshit that also happens to revolve around shit like this guy using Spider-Man's metal arms to hold spears. It does have the tried and true weird powers that can affect the flow of fights, extraordinary abilities and logic-breaking inhuman attacks. Like there's that one part where someone uses their illusory powers to trick a guy into fucking a cockroach nest. But at the end of the day, it's still usually about two people boxing the shit out of each other. And the movements, the friction, the intensity of it all. It's just violently fun and always engaging. Watching Nagi go from his loud protagonist shitbag ways to becoming the sleeping demon he always was deep inside. Everyone else around him also becoming a sick-ass fighting freak. And on the flip side to this, Air Gear is the exact same thing, but also 1,000,000,000% different. People are beating the shit out of each other over in this series for sure, no denying that. But it's absolutely not a martial arts manga. Hell, technically, it's a sports shonen in a way. So battles over here play out much differently a lot of the time. People losing fights more by losing the round of air trek battle itself. The matches Iki and the crew face can change based on the team they are facing, so they constantly have to adapt to new rules, new environments to skate through, and must always find new ways to develop their speed, their skills, their own individual wings. And during these matches, Oh Great uses his amazing understanding of art to create some of the most beautiful expressions of movement, speed, and flight that I have ever seen in anything. Like no manga, anime, movie, whatever can compare to the level of speed that this fucking manga somehow manages to fill itself with. Whether a storm rider is flying high in the sky with the wind at their backs, or they're deep in a tunnel skirting around the walls, their speed and motion is always the focal point. The wind that carries our wings is what the core of the series is about. And Oh Great makes sure to translate that exact theme into all of the art in Air Gear. And in my opinion, for that exact reason, it's one of the purest forms of artistic expression in a manga that I've ever seen. And outside of these free flow scenes of riders up in the sky, they are backed up by insane attacks that feel like characters just straight up have stand powers due to the wild damage and artistic impressions they can give off. Agito's shark fangs, Kazu's jet airplanes, Bucha's tank, Onigiri's pig monsters. Like, none of these things are real or happening in the battle, but the wind they give off is so specific from the force of their air treks that it feels like you've been gored by a shark. The wind from Agito's kicks tearing your body apart like fangs. The speed Kazu blasts past you with seeming like you're on the runway itself at takeoff. The heat from his friction lighting the ground itself on fire. Like, all of this is just artistic expression. It's all just fucking wind itself. And it makes the combat of Air Gear feel like it's based in the movement of that wind. And man, there's really just nothing else like it. Now, lastly, before we talk about the plots of the series and Oh Great's writing style, there's one more dual aspect I want to talk about with his art, and it's things that are loudly displayed in both series. For as insane and beautiful as his art can be and how much I've praised it, one page over from the most articulate character design you've ever seen is the absolute horniest, most dipshit ass, goofy ass shit you can possibly imagine. Gonna try and skirt around the YouTube goons on this one, so like, comment, subs, help keep me afloat when they execute this video's monetization. And shout out my patrons right here, these are the coolest people. I literally, theoretically, figuratively die for them. I don't have 13 to make this bit completely work, so come sub now and you can be Axel. I'll let you be Axel. Anyway, now like I had said, bro got his start in some Dojin Arrow shit, and that carried over hard to the rest of his career, with both Air Gear and much more so Tenjo featuring the most beautiful women you have ever seen, who also are naked a lot of the time for like no reason. CMX, the original English license holders for Tenjo in the US, were actually at the center of a massive fan backlash in the early 2000s due to the extreme levels of censorship their version had. Toned down violence and sex, rewritten dialogue, it's just a really inferior version of the series. Which for CMX's motto to be 100% manga, meaning it was as close as possible to the original Japanese releases, that's pretty fucking lame. Now, CMX had claimed that Oh Great himself was the one who had approved their changes, and that even if they may have gone too far in some areas, the group editor for CMX, Jake Tarbox, actually resigning due to the backlash, they were still committed to finishing the series. And well, that didn't work out. CMX ended up shutting down due to the changing manga landscape of the 2000s, and the run was ended at volume 18 out of 22. CMX itself was a manga imprint created by DC Comics that barely lasted 5 years before shutting down, and Tenjo for sure is a large reason for their failure to grow. A lot of the info online surrounding this whole ordeal is from like 15 years ago now, so most of the links and petitions are dead and broken. You can use the Wayback Machine to find some of the forum posts and examples of the censorship if you want to dive deeper. There's just not much point to me showing the censor comparisons here because I have to just fucking censor them anyway, so you know. Thankfully though, Viz stepped in shortly after and re-released the series in their 2-in-1 full contact edition, very proudly boasting the fact that it's totally uncut, boobs and butts ready for you to read. And after reading said boobs and butts in Tenjo, I couldn't imagine ever reading it censored due to how much of the series is focused around sex or nudity in general. Like, it's a main part of the plot itself. If you remove it, it's gonna feel weird. Despite how mature the theming can get or how deep the writing may seem, bro is a horny dipshit who's always injecting his dumbass jokes and super hot girls to spice up the moments between his extremely raw art. Tool 2 and Air Gear is a team made of women that are totally neutral to the air trek battles, and instead they use their skills to tune up a Storm Rider's skates, fixing them and refining them for their next ride, no matter who they may ride for. The only way to do this, of course, is to literally wear skin-tight, in my biggest air quotes, spandex suits so they can get their bodies as close as possible with the rider and match their internal tempo, so it looks like this. Paper thin excuse, but I can accept it. Thankfully, just because his women are usually drawn to be the hottest people imaginable that get into suggestive situations, they are also usually the most badass and memorable characters in those stories. Aya and Maya Natsume, Ringo and Rika, Emily Adachi, Benkei, Nagi's mom Makiko. Like, don't get me wrong, dude is first and foremost thinking, how can I get her panties on the page? But it's delivered in such a killer and confident way that even if the design exists to his taste, it never in any way lessens how important these characters are or devalues their skills. And I think that kind of rules, honestly. I'm pretty indifferent to fan service overall, I can totally take it or leave it. Don't let my prison school video fool you. But if it's fan service coming from the baddest bitches imaginable, my ears and eyes shall open. Also, aside from his beautiful and horny art, bro can just design some of the goofiest reaction shots I've seen in a minute. Wild proportions, references to other series, these little ball designs that appear in Air Gear when someone is being an asshole. I fucking love this big slime Iki design, he's built just like me for real. For as intensely amazing as the art is, it's also full of levity and stupid humor that really makes characters like Iki's personality shine so much harder than it could have otherwise. I mean shit, Sora has 3 separate dogs whose names are Stone, Cold, and Stunner, which that's peak, it's peak, you can't argue with peak. Between the art itself, his insane level of increasing scale, and just his insane level of big asses and goofy shit on page, Oh Great's style is something that I truly, really love, like, a lot. It's the main reason I wanted to make this video to begin with. It's a style that between the overuse of accessories, flair, stupid shit, and vibes, mixed with a true artistic understanding of what makes people and drawings themselves beautiful. Like I had said before, I really do think he's in a league of his own. And just like with his art, when it comes to his storytelling, I also think there's no one else just like him as well, for better or worse. So now, let's finally kick on the spoiler warning and talk about the writing styles of Air Gear and Tenjo Tenge, how they compare, contrast, and each stand on their own as being so eternally unique. Oh, and yeah, I'm still going to talk about both of their animes after this and some extra Oh Great stuff, so jump to here if you want to skip spoilers and just hear about that shit. If I had to pick a word to describe Oh Great's overall writing style, I think I would go with esoteric, maybe? It's a style that, by all means, is kind of rough for a battle manga. A lot of shonen series wear their motivations on their sleeve. The characters in the story will go out of their way to directly tell you the plot, their feelings, and how they want the reader to react to the situations that's being created. But with O Great's writing, there's a level of abstraction that is always flowing in the background. Like his thoughts and his character's thoughts are buried beneath layers of ethereal feelings and silent emotions. In both manga, there's this consistent use of like doublespeak or dual conversation, characters having outward dialogue, whether it's a discussion or a brooding monologue, and also the out-of-speech bubble narration text that's a second layer of feeling behind the main dialogue. Them being used next to each other all of the time, like the character is having their public thoughts and their private thoughts at the same time on the same page, conveying the multi-layered dynamics and ideals that a lot of his characters have. Now, this isn't to say all of his writing as a whole is this abstract vibe of pure feeling. Honestly, it's like a firm 50-50 split. For as deeply personal and introspective as his writing likes to stay, it's also just as loudly stupid and over the top as it can be. Like, Air Gear is about motorized roller skates that can warp the ideal of wind itself into being shonen power attacks, and the scale from that rises to the point where fucking Obama himself body swaps with one of the main team members and he starts skating the fuck around and is basically a main character for the rest of Air Gear, like an actual very important character to the plot who has an insane backstory. Almost every other chapter in both series finds some way to reference movies, manga, and anime that O Great obviously just loves. Gundam, Macross, Fist of the North Star, JoJo, Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. The character DJ Plugman is just Conti from Fooly Cooly. He is always tossing in the shit he loves, and just like with his over-the-top use of flashy designs and accessories, this writing and these references go such a long way in showing you what kind of personality the dude really does have. That duality in both artist and author. Like, for everything that's so soaked in emotion and feeling, there's a flip side of the dumbest, most stupid plot beats you can think of, that while a lot of the times are so absurd you just smile and say, hell yeah, whatever, let's go, there are others that really can stop some readers in their tracks and, even in my own opinion, don't really feel like overall great moves to make in your story. And with that, let's talk about Tenjo Tenge. So, Tenjo is famous for a few things, but the big one I knew before even diving in was it's full of flashback arcs, and people usually use this in a derogatory sense. Personally speaking, I don't mind flashback arcs. In fact, I usually really enjoy them. Between my Bleach and Shaman King videos, that's a topic I've defended more than once. But in Tenjo's case, I'm split about 50-50 on the subject. For better or worse, at about volume 4 into Tenjo, a pretty substantial flashback arc begins, and it's one that lasts like another 4 volumes. Meaning that by the release of volume 8, the series had spent half of its length in a flashback. Now, with Tenjo being a monthly series, that means for literal years, the plot was more focused on events of the stories in the past than the main characters that had barely spent about 4 volumes introducing and setting up. And for a lot of people, that rubbed them wrong. It feels like you're just starting to get to know Nagi, Bob, and the crew before being sent back literal years to learn about a now extremely complicated plot that was brewing in O Great's mind. The series leaving that flashback arc and then hard shifting from martial arts school busting to an experimental war between generations, Nagi's father actually being a reincarnation / immortal being who, during another flashback arc, is revealed to be using ancient evil ki in a plot to become God. A plot that's been brewing since like the 1600s, which obviously is a pretty big shift from where the story started. The introduction of these elements during that initial long-ass flashback arc is actually really enjoyable in my opinion, with Maya and Aya's dead older brother Shin being the center point of a large part of the series. Him going batshit insane due to the cursed blood he has inside of him that gives him the dragon eyes, the ability to see the key of every living thing on Earth, letting Shin both read minds and the actual future itself. The endless sea of information breaking him down and losing his mind in a violent rage, murdering his parents as a kid and leaving his sisters, friends, and enemies all to be the ones left to endure this power-broken brain. Shin mentally abusing his sister Maya with a strange obsession that almost comes off like an insane lover and not just an overprotective brother. all of this culminating in his death with the end of the flashback arc, and his spirit energy still plaguing his sisters and the cast long after he's been gone. And honestly, I really like that whole setup. Giving Maya and Aya a whole fleshed out backstory that they're still in the process of dealing with. Extending the lore of this wild school and the people in it like the student council president Mitsuomi. And of course, setting the stage for Nagi and Bob to fight in the defense of these two sisters going forward. It's with the actual return to the main plot after this arc where I feel that Tenjo begins to really lose itself in itself. First with the introduction of the F faction and Nagi's dad Sohaku, then the feudal era Japan flashback that sets up the reincarnation war and the fact that Nagi's dad is technically an eyeball filled with ancient ki? The actual story of Nagi, what he fights for, what he uses his fist to protect, starts to feel kind of unimportant overall, and that this ancient plot involving Sohaku and Maya's ancestors is the real story, leaving Nagi himself kind of just existing in it. The main thrust of the manga itself being tied with this basically unrelated ancient bloodline cast really causes things to drag in my opinion. Once again, leaving the main plot and spending multiple chapters giving the ancient eyeball explanation of Sohaku. Now, in all honesty, maybe this part will hit harder if you're actually a Japanese native or a feudal era Japan fanboy, especially seeing as how the story says that Sohaku is actually an immortal Mitsuhide Akechi, and also basically confirming the theory that the priest figure Tenkai in history, someone that was a mysterious advisor to Ieyasu Tokugawa, and that Tenkai was actually in fact Mitsuhide in disguise. But I'm neither a Japanese guy nor that much of a weeb, so it just causes the chapters to start to feel boring. And when it actually comes down to Sohaku himself, seeing as how he's become the true antagonist of the series, this is going to be a comparison for probably no one, but Sohaku himself has the same level of impact as the season 3 villain of the show Heroes, Arthur Petrelli. Yeah, fuck you, we're talking about Heroes in 2023, and the bad parts, not even the good stuff that was season 1. But comparing those two as villains, they create a threat that's just not great. Revealing the long-gone father of the main character to be the secret bad guy in the shadows the entire time, and then spending the rest of their arc not developing that character at all, and them instead just being a personification of an enemy to beat, developing no actual personality or anything unique about them to remember. Like, it's just not thoughtful writing. It doesn't feel meaningfully connected in any way. Like this family battle and how it affects Peter Petrelli and I guess also Nagi isn't important, and what matters is, well, honestly, not much. Just people beating the shit out of each other for an ending where it feels like none of the main characters deserve to be the main characters, and the villain itself was just an evil guy. Now that doesn't mean that I think these characters are bad to say. Like, real shit, Bunshichi is one of my most favorite manga characters, like, in general now. Double motherfucking Impact Tawara is my guy. I love this fucking dude. Bro got shanked in the legs over and over by a demon katana and still used his arm strength to punch himself off of a car and use the momentum of his own punch to throw another punch. Like, goddamn, that's the dude. Of course, this is minus his odd comments about using big sexual assault in a comedic way. Oh Great does use that topic a few times in Tenjo, and it's never great, and in fact it kind of sucks. Nagi himself is a really enjoyable lead to the story. Bob is a dope-ass friend who feels like a great side character to stand next to Nagi. Taki and Nagi's relationship with his brother and the Natsume sisters, changing how he grows into the guy he becomes. Basically his own main character in a way. Maya and Aya both are each really cool and have unique aspects to them that I super like. Maya being the older, more protective sister with a delinquent-ass wild shriek who can kick anyone's shit in. And on the other side, you have Aya, the shonen blueprint herself, and she's just as awesome. Super sweet, extremely powerful with an insane side, and deeply in love with Nagi. She obviously is the main heart and soul of the series. Combined with her dragon eyes and the Reiki sword, she has her own darkness that she uses to destroy her enemies, all while still retaining that super cute-ass demeanor that absolutely inspired Orihime from Bleach. Nagi has the internal struggle of the Magaburai blood, the dragon ki passed down in his bloodline by the insane-ass dad ball that's been growing inside him since the beginning of the series. His hair shooting out and going jet black, and his fighting style getting wild as hell. And also being the type of power that can consume and destroy him, and it's a really awesome story for Nagi as he has to struggle to find what it is his fists are meant to fight for, all while not giving in to that cursed lineage he comes from. Also, his late game design is fucking killer. The heavy leather eye patch mixed with Ogre's natural art evolution goes so insane. Bob and Nagi just being total shitheads together is so fun, dude. Flipping off anyone who looks at them funny and threatening to beat their limp dick asses all around the block, and I just love these fucking assholes, man. It unfortunately just feels like they're dope as hell in a story that doesn't care about them. Like their personal struggles don't matter overall, and they're stuck being cool ass people who can't totally flex their wings. Maya and Aya have a series-long running dynamic with Shin and their bloodline, and how it's the center point for a lot of this conflict. And while they both get tons of screen time, badass moments, and exceptional writing between the two, it feels like as characters, they just don't get to take a meaningful role in the story that's largely about them, as they usually end up dealing with enemies that don't really matter in the overall plot, and man, it's just super unfortunate. But moving past all of that, people online like to meme, "Oh great doesn't know how to end a story" for both of his series. And in Tenjo's place, I honestly think they're extremely wrong. The story, while still being all over the place, finally brings it back to that martial arts tournament between Mitsuomi and the Juken Club, letting Bunshichi have one of the dopest fights in a manga ever, and also giving Taki and Nagi his chance to finally shine. And even past that, the final clash between Nagi and Sohaku in their mental dimensions is honestly super cool. Their ki combining and popping out a god baby from the sky, while in the mental realm they're still having their own personal battle with this insane level of art and beauty. The actual ending to Tenjo is super solid and lets this cast that I really did enjoy get their much deserved time to shine. And in my own opinion, it was the entire fumbled bag on the way to that ending that became the real issue. Anyway, I think all of this is to say that my main point about Tenjo as a whole is that it has plot elements and characters that I truly really like. Character moments that I think are actually fucking fantastic, backed by some of my most favorite manga art in existence. It just sucks that the story itself doesn't seem to like those characters as much as me, and wanted to focus way more on a large-scale plot with so many moving parts. And despite those characters getting non-stop beautiful color pages, battle scenes, and general cool shit, I wish they all just mattered more than as pawns in a forever reincarnation war. Thankfully, where I think Tenjo is lacking in a lot of different ways, I'm happy to report that when it comes to Air Gear, I feel almost the exact opposite. Where the core of Tenjo Tenge was focused on combat and fighting for what matters to you, when it comes to Air Gear, I think the core theme, the message at the center of it all, is freedom. Freedom to fly, freedom to be who you want to be, going with the flow and living life 1 second at a time. Iki's journey as a storm rider and as a person is the core example of that idea, and it created one of my most favorite protagonists of all time. Now, the story of Air Gear is fairly simple, kinda, and has expertly paced progression from chapter 1 all the way to the finish line, starting firmly on the ground and seeing what air treks can do, the freedom that they can give. Iki knows he wants to fly high in the sky like Simka and the other riders. But like most people would be, bro fucking sucks at skating his first time. He can't ride anywhere, much less even stand up properly. He's told by others around him that this shit isn't a joke. Using these to fly while having no experience in the sky can lead to disasters. I mean, hell, bro's miles in the sky, one slip to the ground and kabamzo, you're splattered on the street. And with that in mind, Iki, being a proper shonen protagonist, just doesn't give a fuck. He's found something that makes him feel alive, something that he wants to do and have fun with, so fuck the rules, he's going riding. And it's because of that exact mentality why I love both Ikki and Air Gear itself. Because it's not that he doesn't give a fuck about his safety and well-being, it's just that he wants to ride. He wants to feel that wind in his hair, that whole new type of speed as he soars high over the city itself. And as he keeps growing in his ability to skate, fighting off rival teams who want to claim Ikki's territory for themselves, losing just as many matches as he wins, his true motivation never changes. The dude wants to ride. Who cares about fighting to be the best? Fuck all this territory control shit. He's a storm rider, and what he wants is to ride with his friends until he just can't anymore, and bro, that's it. That's his main motivation from the start of the story until its final all-out blast of an arc. The dude just wants to ride. That single core motivation fuels Ikki, his team, and the plot itself across each of their battles with rival teams in both the Parts War and the later Tropea Tower tournament. In Parts War matches, crews bet their airtrek parts against other teams and their parts. Winner take all and loser get fucked. Based on the overall ranking you have as a rider, teams compete in tiered competitions that change based on rank, the lowest being F and the highest being A. The actual battles themselves getting way more complicated the higher a team is ranked, from normal dashing races at the bottom tier to high sky flying battles of keep away with tactical planning at A. And past the battles for new Trek parts themselves, there is also a secondary reason to compete in Parts War. Betting your team's emblem instead of parts, the wager being your controlled territory and the respective riders and onlookers alike. Losers being disbanded and their team's respect shattered. Between these matches, random encounters with other riders, and the eventual trophy tower battles against Team Genesis and Sora, the entire team of Kogara Samaru get their own chances to grow and shine. Agito and Kazu specifically, which makes sense because those two whip ass. And when it comes to the team itself, the synergy being a main part of the matches is also just a really smart move. Sure, Onigiri and Bucha don't get the time to shine as much as the rest, but the team itself is always an important factor in the story. Ikki is the main dude, but his wings are lifted up by the wind of his team and his friends. He can't do it without them, which leads to some insane team-ups during battle and always feeling like the main cast itself never falls behind too far in the actual plot. Hell, the best match in the series is the virtual battle against the original Sleeping Forest team, not only due to the general insanity and coolness of it, but because it requires the help of every single team member to win in their own unique skating style, even finally giving my girl Emily Adachi a dope-ass moment, reminding you that even though Ikki is that dude, his team and friends all still kick ass and he needs their support to win. Oh, and speaking of Emily, Kazu is easily one of my favorite characters in Air Gear. The best friend to Ikki who, despite never being able to totally catch up to him in equal strength, still stands on his own right beside Ikki, the hyper-fast demon of the team with jet engine flow that inherits the mother flame of speed itself, using his airtrek's friction to create flames made of wind, locking his enemies in time and place, burning the competition down as he blasts past them. And the reason all of that stuff about him is so good is because Kazu isn't that guy. Just like with Bob and Nagi and Tenjo, Kazu's not the star of the show, he's not the leader, he's not even technically the second strongest on the squad. But the team can't exist without him, because Ikki can't exist without him. Where Ikki is the loud asshole blasting forward with his middle finger out, it's up to Kazu to stand behind him and be that reliable wall of speed that help keeps Ikki's wings flying. The duo not even starting as friends when they were kids, Ikki was a dick-ass little bully until Kazu stood up to him, training non-stop and working hard to make himself better and show Ikki's super fast speed up, forcing Ikki's shit ass to realize that he'll fall behind unless he also tries to stay ahead of Kazu, an internal and eternal reason to always be growing himself, to be faster, to be better. It may be born from the selfishness of not wanting to lose, but instead of him being a shit about it, he recognized the hard work from Kazu and wanted to be better on his own, using that feeling of inferiority from someone that he bullied being cooler than him now as motivation, while also forming their lifelong friendship and rivalry. And going back to that selfishness, that's honestly one of the reasons why Iki has crossed over into being one of my favorite protagonists. The dude's an asshole. He's rude, he's shisty, he's super self-centered and hella perverted. He takes almost any situation and finds a way to make it about him, almost like he just knows he's the main character. He wants the attention and the love. He doesn't need it, but he almost expects it. Iki's team motto for Kogara Samaru is crush, kill, destroy, because that's genuinely what him and the boys want to do to their enemies. They're all underhanded assholes who will do whatever to win. You can't predict what he's gonna say, what he'll do, how he's going to react to a situation. And all of those character traits combined together come from one single place. Iki has always seen himself in front of himself. No matter how fast he goes, the moves he makes, the self inside of him is always moving just one step ahead. And Iki, having this mental image he's always chasing, acts and thinks in his unique way because he's looking ahead to the future. His eyes have always been fixed on what's next, the internal self that he wants to be, the speed he wants to reach, the places he wants to find, and he follows his own road to get there. Unlike some other characters in the series, or even Nagi from Tenjo, Iki never gets a crazy power-up, a new form, or anything like that. He grew to where he goes from being stuck on the ground all the way to the top of the sky, the wind itself moving at his will and obeying his commands, because it just loves the dude. He flies at his pace and with such a strong conviction, such a heavy wind, that it picks up the ones around him and carries them along for his ride. Iki is a storm in so many ways, the loud, brash asshole who sweeps up everyone off their feet in his way, on his terms, letting the wind take him wherever he wants to go. Between the free and easy vibe of going with the flow mixed with the total self-righteous, cocky nature that's born from pure confidence, there's no one just like Iki to me, man. He's certified that guy material. A true dude among dudes, my man just rules so hard. Also, unlike Tenjo Tenge yet again, I fucking loved the art structure of the entire plot and the final boss himself, Sora Takeuchi. Iki meeting the former Skykeeper, the thing he himself is striving to be and training under him, becoming friends and trusting him. Seeing how reaching those heights Iki's chasing crippled Sora and brought him crashing down, instilling that fear and respect in Iki towards both Sora and Storm Riding itself. Only for Sora to stand the fuck up out of his wheelchair and go, bro, I'm untouchable. Decimating the playing field over and over for the rest of the story, and like, it was great. Outside of Sora and Iki's relationship and their growing dynamic over the plot, Sora and his twin Nike, or Nike, were just so fucking fun. Genetic horror asshole kids kept underground who saw the sky once and it changed them forever. Sora declaring that he will make that sky his, and doing all the crazy shit that he begins to do. Sure, the final arc gets really out there, gravity turning off is kind of insane, and the road there is filled with all kinds of crazy shit like Agito having a third personality that's technically the soul of his dead brother's girlfriend and also his brother is his dad. But all that wacky shit aside, it still comes down to a true battle between a hero and a villain who were friends at one point, even if it was a mostly one-sided friendship. The hero who truly doesn't want to beat the villain's ass, but he knows he's gotta. It culminating in a beautifully over-the-top finale that I enjoyed the entirety of, flaws and all. In the words of John Omaha aka Barack Obama, they challenged God, and hell, in my opinion, they stuck the landing. So all of the separate things about them aside, there's the final aspect I want to mention about Tenjo, Air Gear, and O-Great's writing in general that I do think is very important when talking about his manga. And that is, it's kind of hard to follow what the fuck is going on sometimes. As the series build their plots and he develops in both art and writing, there's parts of each of them that feel like, I don't really know what's happening, but it sure looks cool. The back and forth bloodline battle between the Natsume family and Nagi's family can get so lost in itself. the metaphors, and the consistent new characters who just feel out of place. And don't even get me started on Sohaku's ki energy and all of that reincarnation bullshit. And over with Air Gear, bro, these wind attacks just become superpowers, and the explanation for them is, these skates is crazy. Ikki's dad becoming a main character at the end and is revealed to be a mad scientist that's at least partially responsible for the entire plot. A twist Oh Great must really like, so nice he did it twice, despite him doing nothing at all with Ikki's dad as a character, and instead the final battle being a race down from space to the ground that's full of more sick character posing and introspective writing than it is actual racing. Oh Great's scale is always rising, always growing to be more insane, and he obviously just has ideas on the fly and works them into his stories, regardless if the ideas are good or bad. But even when all these changes are flying at you, it's like his writing simplifies down and chooses to focus more on the characters and their emotions, saying fuck all that insane plot shit I came up with, what matters most right now is how badass Ikki is, or how far Nagi has grown and what he fights for. Is it the smartest choice to just trade between these two things back and forth? And debatable considering how much of the online consensus of Oh Great is amazing art, can't end a story for shit. And even if I don't really agree with that, it can be hard to argue sometimes. Although, I'll be real for a second, complaints about Air Gear becoming a battle shonen with wild powers is really dumb in my opinion. People act like the powers got too insane, like, come on, this shit was always built that way from day one. It's about motorized roller skates that using wind can somehow stop time itself. So if that's how you feel about shonen progression, I got bad news for you about pretty much all battle shonen. Anyway, looking at these two series and taking everything I've said, good and bad, it probably sounds like I'd be saying you should read Air Gear and not Tenjo Tenge. And honestly, that's probably the smarter decision, but coming from me directly, man, I don't know. I've got the full series on my shelf and I've boxed it up to sell and unpacked it more than once, because I really can't decide how I feel about it. Now that after this video is done and spending months on Oh Great and I've analyzed it one more time, I think my opinion is, yeah, fuck it, it's aight. It's got a long list of issues and things that upset me from a story standpoint, but between the art, characters, and combat, it's at least a really fun ride. And even more to its credit, going back through the entire manga for this video, the good parts and the bad, I was reminded of a lot of smaller moments throughout that were just really enjoyable. Little character details and badass scenes, man, I just can't hate it. What can I say? I'm not a hater about most things, it's not who I am. And on the other side with Air Gear, yeah, probably like a 9 out of 10 for me. It's got problems, but who cares? It's too cool, I can't help it. Ikki raw peak fiction. They're two manga that, despite being super similar in tons of ways for obvious reasons, they each stand on their own with totally unique things, for better or worse. And I think that both are worth taking the time to read. But what I think might not be worth your time exactly is the anime adaptations for both of them. Back in the early 2000s, both Tenjo Tenge and Air Gear got anime adaptations by Madhouse and Toei respectively, and overall, I think they're both First up, Tenjo Tenge's is how I found out about the series. I remember seeing Bomb Ahead, the OP, and thinking both, damn, this is super catchy, but also, why you got the black dude out grooving in the lead, but he was the only one who didn't get a name card? Who was the mysterious black man? Poor Bob, come on, he rules. Why'd they do him like that? I'm still upset about that one. But outside of that OP itself, I don't have much to say about the 2004 anime other than, yeah, it's fine. It's got some great coloring and a few scenes in particular are extremely well directed, matching really closely to the same vibes as the manga in my opinion. And of course, some of the fight scenes are super well done and carry that brawler-ass spirit of the manga on its sleeve. The general minute-to-minute animation is also decent, like it's not exactly anything groundbreaking or worth going insane over, but it's solid and gets the job done. Overall though, the toned down nature of the sex, violence, and general content being left out, the unfinished ending and kind of slow pacing when matched with the progression of the monthly chapters, and of course, as well as comparing it to Oh Great's unmatchable art, it's just not exactly a great substitute for the manga, I think. Also, a lot of the show was spent in that early flashback arc, with the final episode being the one that refocuses on Nagi and ending abruptly, it getting one more 30-minute OVA to give it some kind of a proper ending despite it not really doing that. So anime-only people kinda got cucked hard on the plot. Oh, and this one's a bit personal, but Bomba Head set up unrealistic expectations for the OST because I got hyped for the series' music only for it to be hella generic, so that was unfortunate. Bomba Head still whips ass though. And a few years down the line from the Tenjo anime was the Air Gear one, it dropping in 2006. Like I had said, this one was made by Toei, and in my opinion compared to the Madhouse anime for Tenjo, is much worse. Air Gear is a series about movement, about speed and flight itself, and I just don't think Toei did a great job at translating that concept. So between stiff animation and wonky character designs, I was already a bit cold on it. Watched the rest of it for the video's sake, but was overall super let down. It just in no way even compares to the manga. A compliment I can give, it for sure got the cool factor down, if anything just because the OST features the dude himself Skankfunk aka Hideki Naganuma, the insane brain behind the Jet Set Radio OST and also just general Twitter menace. Jet Set Radio is the exact vibe Air Gear gives off, shit like DJ Plugman especially I feel. So real shit, getting Naganuma for the anime is probably one of the smartest moves in animation history honestly, even if I think the anime itself is pretty mid. But just like with Tenjo, when you're comparing this to this and this to this, I can't help it man, the choice is clear as day for me. Sorry to some of the anime fans I know will be watching this, I'm an art guy first and foremost and this shit will always speak louder to me, and as harsh as it sounds to Air Gear's anime specifically, I just think it's kind of bad and not worth your time. Alright, so all of that aside, what's so great doing these days and how can you read both Tenjo and Air Gear? Well on that first one, currently I think he's just chillin'. Time of writing this, he just recently finished his manga adaptation of the Bakemonogatari light novels, the Nisio Isin ones. And imagine that kabam, the art's fucking stellar. I haven't read either this adaptation or any of the Monogatari series in general, the movies are on the list eventually, but this will probably be where I start with it since his art can be my gateway. The series has a full English release through Vertical Comics and you can easily grab them anywhere as of now in 2023, so if that's something you're interested in, here's what it looks like and bam, it looks good, I'm gonna check it out here soon, you may want to as well. And unfortunately, when it comes to easily grabbing these volumes, that isn't a luxury most of Tenjo or Air Gear currently have. Like I had mentioned earlier, Tenjo had an original release with CMX and then a re-release with uncut content under Viz's 2-in-1 omnibuses. As of now, some of those omnis can be easily found and others not so much. When I was buying them to read about 2 years ago, Volume 8 was a difficult-ass challenge to find, and looking online for this video, it's not gotten any easier since 2021 it seems like. This is the premier way to read the series and Viz hasn't been the best about the restocks, so that's unfortunate. And in a similar vein, Air Gear also had an original release under Del Rey, a now defunct American publisher that was absorbed by Kodansha. During their release, they got to around volume 17 or so before the merger, and afterwards the rest of the series was handled by KC. The unfortunate part of this is that the early volumes 1 through 17 singles were never reprinted after this merge, and the early series was only printed in 3-in-1 omnibuses going forward, the 6th one only having 2 volumes in it. So, those original single Del Rey volumes between 1 through 17 cost a lot, and personally, I hate the 3-in-1 short fat-ass omnibuses by KC. These, Tsubasa, Holic, Love Hina, Negima, they're ugly and not fun to read or even hold. And even more unfortunate, after the merge and KC had finished printing the singles, it seemed like they almost did it out of obligation because these bitches is super scarce and hard to find for decent prices. Some volumes in the 20s to 30s can be found on Amazon, but other volumes seem lost to time. Thankfully, both of these series have full digital releases and can be bought or acquired online. Tenjo's featuring all of the color art that I've been showing off, so you do you however you do. Also wanted to throw this in here, he did the art for a series called Byorg Trinity that ran in Ultra Jump, with the author being someone named Otaro Maijo. Haven't read the series myself, but after looking it up for this video and then searching the author's name, this is the same person that wrote the fucking George Joestar light novel, the story about Joseph's dad and Beyonds, which are not stand powers. So if anything, it's worth checking out for that in my opinion, just throwing it out there. This was a weird video to make, man. Probably the weirdest one for me yet because I'm writing about two series at the same time by the same guy that are so similar but different. It was just wacky. But I really wanted to cover both of them because the flaws I've mentioned aside, there's nothing out there just like Tenjo Tenge, and even less so with Air Gear. But I feel like both deserve some kind of spotlight along with Oh Great himself. Hopefully it all translated well in my thoughts, and if you liked it, hit the fucking buttons. YouTube hates its creators, so likes, comments, subs, it all helps. Thanks for watching, and sorry it took a bit to make. I've been playing Baldur's Gate 3 because that's probably the game of the year, and that shit's very time consuming, and then Cyberpunk 2.0 happened, and it's a lot. Gaming is never ending, and from this point until February of next year is a death march. Anyway, be back next time with something less complicated. I hope. Maybe.